Okay, so good morning. My name is Erwin Williams. I'm the Chief Software Engineer here at Teleios Systems. This is another one of a particular kind of activity we've done with the University of West Indies for a number of years. It is an engagement between Year 1 students of the Faculty of Electrical Engineering, particularly the Department of Faculty of Engineering, the Department of Electrical Engineering, particularly to allow their Year 1s to ask questions of companies from particular industries, in this case, the software development industry in Trinidad and Tobago, and use those questions to help inform them about the shape of things, and including how to think about engineering, how to think about their studies, how to probably set themselves up. We've always been happy to facilitate it. This is probably our sixth or seventh time doing it. And so today's format will take a flow based on the questions that were submitted before by students. We will have about 10 or so students joining us. A number of Teleios employees from a variety of departments will also be on the call to answer these questions. They've also been given the questions. So though the questions were already created, we do have some leeway for further questions as you come along. This call is being recorded, so we do intend to share it later on. If you do join the call or you are on the call right now, please keep your mics muted until you have a question to ask or we ask you for some sort of interaction. It is also supposed to be an interactive session. Most of us are working from home. Well, and let me not say most. Some of us are at Teleios. There are persons who are at the office and persons working from home. I myself am working from home because we know there's a global pandemic going around that we're trying to contain, COVID-19, and part of the measures to contain that is to engage in a strong degree of social distancing. So I have a couple of young kids, so let me warn you, if you hear random noise or maybe you see a young girl or two run across and say, "Daddy, come do this." I'm at home and they're home too and we're having fun. If you hear that happen for another one of the Teleios team members, that may be the case. So let's be flexible to those kinds of disruptions. If you see some birds fly around, it's not because I'm in a jungle. We're just witness to a part of my home and the surrounding environment, which is less prone to disturbances than where we may have met inside, surprisingly enough. So anyway, let's get started, and we'll talk some more about why I called to this particular episode "Working from Home." So we have 47 questions, and we'll have answers from these departments. And as each team member comes on, they'll describe what the departments are and what they do. ODCS, the Office of, I think I'll let Jillian describe that when she comes on. CIO, the Chief Software Engineering's office. Offices are the office responsible for design at Teleios, UXD, SaaS Ops, cool name, the QuickWorks product group, Strategic Information Systems, and SSG. So let's get started with ODCS. Mrs. Cudrington, are you ready?
I am. Good morning.
Great. So here we go.
Okay, good. I was going to ask if you were going to put the questions up on the screen.
Sure.
All right. So good morning, everyone. As Ewan said, I am Gillian Codrington. I'm the Manager of Organizational Development and Corporate Services. That is a big word in essence for us dealing with organizational development, which is change inside of the organization, culture, human resource management. Corporate services involves administration, largely. So that's what we do. Okay, so a question from someone, which I found was strange but interesting question, was, are there any other core values to your company besides those provided online? And I don't know if the person who asked that question happens to be online and wanted to clarify their question. But essentially, the core values that we have listed online are our core values. Of course, it is not an exhaustive list, but it's the ones that are core to us. I suppose just like any human being or any organization, there's a whole list of values that you subscribe to. In other words, we want everyone to be honest. We want everyone to have integrity. We want everyone to just a number of things that a number of positive attributes that we want everyone to have. But of course, we couldn't list 10,000 positive attributes on our site and say that those are all our core values. But it is kind of understood and expected that those two are core values, are values rather, that people would subscribe to. Which would be basic values that any society would like people to subscribe to. So if we're in Trinidad and Tobago and we're talking about crime and all of those things, it is kind of obvious and understood that we don't want people who are involved in crime and who are dishonest. But Trinidad doesn't have well, in the case of Trinidad, you have a list of laws that will govern each and every one of those things, as does Teleios have policies. But in terms of core values, you tend to focus any society, organization, or individual. The important word there is core. What are the important values to you? And so the ones that we listed are the ones that are very important to us. So, as I said, I'm not quite sure what the person is asking, but I hope I answered the question. So you can move on to the next one, please. All right, what are the working hours of Teleios? So Teleios has flexible working hours. In Trinidad and Tobago, professionals by law are expected to work at least 8 hours. And so Teleios is no different, where professionals, and each one of you, by virtue of the fact that you are at university studying, means that you are working towards becoming a professional, would be, so any such person therefore would be required to work a minimum of 8 hours. And our hours tend to be flexible. It depends on teams, it depends on what you're working on. So sometimes those hours might be very much extended. But for the most part, once you work a minimum of 8 hours, then you should be inside of some general range of what we do. We also, in terms of the flexibility, it's not like you're working 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. type things. So there's a range of normalcy. Most people start work anywhere between 7 a.m. and 10 a.m. and then work your hours from there. Next. How is one, I found this question very funny. How is one disciplined if they arrive to work late? It sounded like a question written by a university student. So this is not school. So of course, having come through school, especially if you're a year one student, basically all you know all your life is school, primary school, where you get licks for, not having one answer correct. And of course, because we come through the SCA world, it's a very punitive and ridiculous world that particularly us in Trinidad live through. And so being a year one student, you may not have a greater and wider appreciation for the world of the world. But all that to say that based on how I answered the previous question in terms of our flexibility, it's not like there's some notion of, well, you arrived at 8:01, so you're going to be disciplined. We don't really have that. So this question is not particularly relevant to Teleios and the Teleios environment. Of course, let's say, well, I can't think of an example where you don't come to work and and there's no explanation or something like that, I would like to believe that. So number one, we don't have those kinds of cases because everyone is accountable. Again, that is not one of our stated and listed core values on the website, but just a normal human value is that you are accountable, and therefore, though it's not listed on our site, we have people who are accountable. So you're not coming in to work for one reason or the other. You talk to your manager, submit it. You're going to be late. You will let your manager know, my car just broke down, I'm running late. So, it's regular, normal, real life human relationships that we have one with the other. Next. What are some of the things you look for when hiring an employee? So from my perspective, so our interview processes, we actually have a two-part interview process. So the first interview actually deals with technical skill and ability. So we actually have technical teams, depending on what you are being hired for, that will interview that team. And well, naturally, if so, in the case of, I assume most of you on the call, you'd be looking for some job like software developer or QA developer, just perhaps different types of developers. I don't know, but there would be a team of people ensuring that you actually know your stuff, or are willing to learn, because one of the things that we've discovered is that a lot of people going through the university system, they're not necessarily fully equipped to jump right into the working world. So one of the things that we need to look for is, do you have a willingness to learn? Do you have aptitude? Have you shown a lot of interest by perhaps working on projects apart from what you did and learned at school? Those kinds of things are attractive to us. And then, as I said, we have a second interview, which is the interview that I happen to be a part of, which looks for organizational fit. Do we think that you will fit into our culture based on just the people that we currently have, the personality, your values, the things that you are interested in, are the things that we kind of look for inside of those interviews, in that second interview.
Okay, great. And Jillian, I'll jump into this to say, there, of course, as she mentioned, there are two sides to this particular question. There's the technical considerations around the levels of skill you have and what you're trying to bring to the particular job you're applying for, and what was just mentioned. We do have a longer video on this on YouTube. If you check out our channel at our Teleios Code Jam channel on YouTube, you would find a longer consideration around how to prepare for that technical interview. That'll help answer this question as well. Thanks. You can move on.
Sure.
Oh, well,
Okay.
that's it. Thank you very much, Mrs. Cudgington.
All right. You're welcome.
We're glad for your support, and let's move on. Take care, everyone. Take care to you, Mrs. Cudgington. Guys, we continue with our Chief Information Officer. He'll answer the questions that proceed from here.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Everyone hearing me?
Yes. Good morning.
Hi, morning, everyone. Thanks for taking time to participate in this online event, and thanks again to Erwin for coordinating this. This is a part of what we do, and I'll touch on that in a bit as I go through the questions. By way of introduction, I think Erwin said we should start with that. So I am Teleios' Chief Information Officer, and basically I am responsible for making sure that the entire company has all that it needs with regards to IT infrastructure and services to be able to do all the things that that people need to do. So this would include managing all of the company's hardware in the first instance, infrastructure. So all of our servers, computers, networking equipment, liaising with vendors in that regard, those who help us and provide services in order for those things to work would fall under my purview. Same thing for software. In terms of provisioning software, managing software, doing updates, providing software for particular functions, and liaising with the vendors in that regard. And then you have things related to that. So issues of security, dealing with our data and protecting that data, making sure it's safe, making sure it's used properly. And I guess anything dealing with IT that the company needs to be supported in with regards to fulfilling our mandate. That falls within my particular office. So that's a general summary of what we do. So with regards to the questions, so I guess I'll follow the same format as Gillian. I'll follow the ones that are on the slides, and when you would forward the slides for me when necessary. So the first one was, is there anything that the company does besides what is listed on the website, the general operation of the company? So if I recall on the website, it does speak about some of our products. So QuickWorks, our mobile messaging services, which are two of our core products. So besides those products, we do offer consultancy services. So Teleios is at its core a software development and services company. So we do write our software here in Trinidad. We are not a reseller. So besides the products that we offer, we do also do a lot of custom development. So clients may have a particular need. They want to solve that need with software of various types. And we would, somebody just unmuted. We would either use our current set of products to help to deliver that solution, or when necessary, develop the solution from scratch. And that allows us to fulfill the client's needs. So we do that for a variety of different types of clients, government, as well as private sector. So that would be one core activity that we do besides the products listed on the website. We are also involved in the power vertical in the United States. So we do have another product that is not listed on the website that we have partnered with. Well, it's one of our subsidiary companies, let's call it that for now, that is offering a solution to power cooperatives in the United States. So they use it to perform their field inspections and a set of other related activities with regards to running of the power cooperatives. And power cooperatives in that regard, think about different aspects of T&Tech or Power Gen or TGU here in Trinidad. Depending on their size, some of them just deal with distribution, some of them are actually power generation. So we have different types and different sizes. And our solution is basically being used by some of them to aid their staff in recording a set of OSHA-based or HSE-based health, safety, and environment-based metrics that allow them to manage their equipment as well as their personnel in a better way. So I don't think that is listed on the website currently. That actually has its own site, so you may or may not have seen it. That is something else that we do as well. Besides that, we are also involved in a lot of advocacy inside of the IT industry. So this meeting this morning is a part of that, working with students like you to give you a sight and a sense of what happens in the industry. I guess giving you a chance to think differently about how you approach your studies based on sight of the real world. So we've been doing that for a number of years in different aspects. So this is one, as Owen said, I think this is the 5th or 6th year we're doing this. You all would also be, well, some of you may be familiar with our CoJam event, which we've been having now for more than 10 years. That also allowed us to partner with universities like UWI, but other tertiary education institutions in Trinidad as well, to give students a chance at working on real world problems and giving them a sight of the industry beyond what they may do in school. So it goes beyond assignments and just answering questions in class and exposing them to the real world scenarios and allow them to think out of the box, to get out of their student mindset and actually place them inside of a real world context. So it challenges them in that regard to go beyond just doing schoolwork. Last year, we didn't have a CoJam competition, but a lot of us were involved in the iGovTT's Hack TT event. Again, some of you may or may not know about it, but that's an initiative that iGovTT had last year where they basically threw out a similar challenge to some tertiary institutions, to the students to come up with solutions that iGovTT wanted to actually deploy. At least that was the goal. So we partnered with them to do that. Some of us were actual judges inside of the competition. Some of us did sessions with the students, teaching them about various aspects of software development. And again, that was part of our advocacy. We want to see the industry developed. And of course, doing that means that the people inside of the industry have to be developed as well. So we are committed to developing young programmers and young IT people in general. And again, like I said, that is part of what we're doing here today as well. So those are some of the other things that we do. In terms of general operations, the company has to run. So, I mean, as I told you before, part of what our group does is to manage the IT infrastructure and services of the team. So besides the software development aspect of it, we have people here who are dealing with our networks, dealing with our servers, dealing with security, databases, etc., etc., etc. So those are functions that we have to take care of as well. Ms. Cotteriton would have spoken about her team that does a lot of the admin stuff. And like any other company, you know, you have finance, you have accounts, you have a number of other things that all together make up the general operation of the company. So you have different things that have to be done in order for the company to be successful. So hopefully that answers what was the intent of that question. So Owen, we can move on. All right, what is the biggest motivation for the company to keep helping customers? And I would have to say, basically, it is a genuine interest in their success. And if you looked at some of the values that were on the website that were referred to in the last set of questions, our goal is not just to make money. We actually when we invest inside of a solution for a customer, we want the thing to work because we want them to be successful in whatever they're doing. Because of course, if they succeed, we succeed as well. So again, inside of anything that we do, we have to keep the customer in mind. So it is not just a matter of, okay, we need to deliver this particular piece of software. But part of what our team would do is work with the customer inside of a true partnership, and find out exactly what their pain points are. What is the software actually supposed to do? Because sometimes people write specifications and they don't think the solution through. There are things that they might miss because, of course, they're inside of the context that the solution is supposed to be deployed in. So they're thinking about it in a particular way, and there are things they may miss. There are things that they don't think about. And part of what we do is try to bring that insight to them so that when the solution is finally deployed, it will be successful in a broader way than what they may have even envisioned themselves. So we've done that across the board with all of our engagements. So even now, we are trying to work with a client who their service basically touches at least greater than 50% of the country in terms of a critical service. And the solution that we are contemplating for them is critical because if that service goes down, it means that a great percentage of the country will be without what is an essential service. So the issues that we are going through with them is not just, well, okay, what does the software need to do, but what is the context in which it has to work? What are the extenuating circumstances? Well, you want it to work in this particular scenario, but what about these other 5 scenarios? Because we understand the significance of the customer service and the implications of the thing failing. So we don't just want to deliver a solution, take the money and run. We want to make sure that the solution fits within their operational context to be successful, not because the software works, but because it enhances their operations in a way that makes them more resilient, more secure, more dependable, it's scalable, etc., etc., etc. So yes, the biggest motivation is really genuine interest in their success, and any engagement that we do, we pour ourselves into it because we really do want them to be successful. All right, next question. All right, what are some of the challenges that were faced in making a mark on the engineering industry when the company was in its infancy? That's interesting. So I wasn't at Teleios when we first started. I came along a couple of years after. But thinking back on our history, I think for any company that is starting off, some of the things that you have to deal with is the fact that you are new. So when Teleios started, it was just 3 guys, literally in a back porch. And so you basically had to build your reputation by doing things that get you recognized. So you're small in terms of size, you're unknown because it's a new company, and of course with new companies you always have the issue of resources. So back in those days, well, not so much back in those days, but just in terms of context and circumstance, these days you always hear about people, not so much down here, but generally getting venture capital and seed funding and all these kinds of things, and so they have resources pumped into them to get going. I think the 3 founders basically funded the thing themselves, And so being small, being unknown at the time, and having a lack of resources made it the start a bit difficult, I guess. But they persevered, and one of the things that has always been a part of the company's way of delivery was to develop products and services that are reliable, that work well, do what it's supposed to do. And again, that whole issue of valuing the customer and making sure that the solution that is delivered is in the best interest of the client, as opposed to just something to make the company money. So in doing that, you gain the trust of people. And over the years, I think Teleios has built its reputation, a reputation of trust, so that when people hear the name Teleios, they think about integrity, they think about quality, they think about a company that is interested in my success. So those would have been the things that would have had to been done early. And having done that for one customer, and then a second customer, and then a third customer, that allowed us to overcome the challenges of being small and the challenges of being unknown and the lack of resources. And we built on top of those early solutions, gaining trust, gaining a reputation in the industry, that then caused us to grow and to become the company that we are today. And we still have aspirations for further growth. So I think, yeah, those would have been some of the challenges in the early days. Small size, relatively unknown, lack of resources, but we persevered past that. And from the get-go, our goal was to always deliver proper software and services to our clients, and that helped us to gain the trust of the industry. Next question. All right, some say that Trinidad and Tobago are not on the same level in terms of technology as other countries. Do you agree with this? If so, do you think your company or us as up-and-coming electrical engineers can help fix this problem? So technology there is a very broad term. I'm going to assume you're speaking about information technology specifically, as opposed to technology in general. And in terms of the actual statement that we are not on the same level in terms of technology as other countries, the short answer to that, if you answer the question directly, is yes. But to me, the bigger thing there would be why. And that is something that we have always had a concern with, because we have always taken the position that we have resources here in Trinidad that can match resources anywhere else in the world, particularly human resources. The issue is, what we do with them and how we invest in them. So if you think about other countries, they may have more resources, both in terms of financial and otherwise. But even in the case where they may not have had more resources or not significantly more resources, they made very different types of decisions with regards to their investments. So in terms of where they focused and what they invested in terms of their people and developing the industries, those are the things that actually made the difference. And if you couple that with the human resource, then that creates a recipe where certain types of technologies can abound in terms of developing technologies now. So there's the aspect of just available technologies, and there are economic circumstances that determine those. But in terms of development and innovation and that kind of thing, the main issue really there is the type and level of investment that our leaders are willing to make. And that is both from a government standpoint as well as business, private sector, and so on. And even educational institutions such as UWI and the rest of them. What investments are we willing to make in order to lower the gap such that the gap exists in terms of what we can actually produce from countries like ours? And you just have to look at the examples. So some of the very examples that people talk about all of the time, like Singapore and lately Estonia. If you look at the history of those two use cases, the governments made very specific and deliberate decisions and backed up those decisions by investments to produce what they have now. Singapore is now an exporter of a set of different technologies. Estonia is now doing the same, and their e-government, I think, is being used as one of the templates for other countries in the world. But they made specific and deliberate investments and decisions with regards to how they want the thing to work, how they want it built, what are the stakeholders that they wanted involved. So in Estonia, for example, they went as far as mandating the banks to make their APIs open so that you can have interfaces with the banking system to facilitate things like online payments and that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I don't have time to go into the details of the Estonia system, but I mean, you can literally pay for anything using the national, well, I'll call it an ID card for now. That mightn't be the term for it. But that was deliberately done. They had a plan and they worked with the stakeholders. They called them in. They said, listen, you want to be part of our government backbone, this is what you need to do. And they were able to convince the different stakeholders to do it, and that's what they have today. So yeah, it really comes down to our leaders making decisions and backing those decisions up with investments. And let me just add to that point in terms of the people. We can literally, I believe, find Trinidad and Tobago nationals all over the world who are doing great things. So coming back to the whole issue of the human resource, yeah, we continue to produce people who are doing fantastic things all over the world. So if you just look at that, the issue of having the human resources is not an issue, because we've produced people who are making their mark. In terms of making a difference, we need to continue to demonstrate that we are capable, and that is what Teleios is continuing to do over the years, producing great software, helping to produce great people, either because they are here and we help to develop them, or with things like this where we reach out to the students and help them to gain a better sight of the world, and to come out of school better prepared. So from that respect, in terms of what you can do, you know, seek to make a difference. Don't just fit into the mold of, well, this is what an engineer does in Trinidad. So whether you end up starting your own company or whether you're working in the context of another, look for opportunities to make your mark. Look for opportunities to innovate. Don't just, you know, fit into the status quo. Make a difference. Make a difference, and find places where you can make a difference. And once we continue to demonstrate that things can be done here, hopefully the investments will come. And once we have the combination of all of those things, I think we could start to shift things in this country in a way that we haven't been able to do it before. I mean, the government continues to talk about diversification and moving away from oil and gas and that kind of stuff. Hopefully that will be backed up in more concrete ways than it has thus far. But we have to continue to show them that the investment is worth it. And that is what I think we can do to help to fix the problem. All right. Is that it, Owen? I think that is the last question, if I recall. Yes. Okay. So thank you very much. I hope that was helpful to you. Owen, you're muted if you're talking.
Hey guys, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yeah, I think I was muted on one device, but not on my machine, and it was causing confusion. Welcome to working from home and doing the same things you do every day, my friends. Let me just pause the screen share for a moment. How are you guys doing? How are your students going? Are these questions helping you in terms of the answers? Are the answers helping you in terms of the questions you had asked us? Guys, if you're answering, you're muted. And you may need to press the little button that says unmute to get yourself going. If you're having difficulty using your mics for whatever reason, which at times happens, feel free to use the chat dialog on the side to add further questions, or just drop a thumbs up or an emoji to say, hey, I'm going fine. So I do want to confirm you guys are hearing fine and things are going okay. So let me hear, students, how are you guys going?
Yeah, I'm hearing.
Yeah, fine.
All right, and is the feedback you're hearing so far helping you get a sense of clarity and sight?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, very cool. So that was Dale. Dale comes from the office of the CIO, as he said. So far, you heard from Jillian. We're really glad to facilitate this. As you know, this meeting is scheduled to go up to 9:30. Don't worry if we get to 9:30 and we're not finished with the questions. We can put another plan. Either I'll continue through and I'll just talk with you students, so Teleios staff can go on, or we may you may want to come with another time to continue this conversation. Either way, I think I'm having a good time. How are you guys going?
Great. Um, I'll have a question. Like, how are we supposed
Sure.
to, if we have a question about what they're talking about, how to ask the question without straight up interrupting them? To do them lose the train of thought as well.
I think you may have to just say hi, excuse, because it's especially with remote conversations like this, you can't see people's facial expressions necessarily. We have to use our voice, or you can if you drop a question in chat, one of us will see it. I'll see it and say, hey Dale, or hey Jillian, or the student has a question. So we are oriented to that kind of engagement because we do this every now and again. Yeah.
Thanks about that.
All right, cool. Just organizing myself now, and so let's continue. I do need to share my screen, right? All right, CSC actually continues next, and here we have Anand Singh. Anand, are you ready?
Yeah, Owen, you hear me, Kai?
Sure, take it away.
Okay. Where did you take this picture from? This
I just went to office and
LinkedIn?
grabbed it. No, it's in the office. You guys uploaded photos a long time ago.
This picture is taken like at least 10 years ago, maybe. All right.
Probably.
Okay, great. Yeah, thanks, Pete. Okay. So let me see. First question here. So just as Bruno was saying, guys, feel free to interrupt me at any time to ask questions. It's not a big deal. So how does our company keep up to date with rapid advancement in technology? So I guess the first thing would be most of the people or most of the engineers that work at Teleios here because we like technology. Like that's basically one of the reasons why we're here, because we like software, we like technology, and it'll be part of us to keep up with that. So that's kind of one of the biggest drivers, or has been rather in the past, one of the biggest drivers for us keeping up with technology. As well, we usually have a meeting every Friday, which is the best meeting of all time, called Power Hour, where an engineer and as well as open to other people in the company, we would just talk about cool things, technologies that we come across, and we kind of present it to the wider audience. That gives us a chance to kind of delve into the technology and also get a chance to present to people and gather feedback on our presentations and so on. So that's another way we keep up with technology. Other than that, some people tend to listen to podcasts on specific technologies related to what we work on and wider technology. Also, because we work in software, when you have work to get done, research needs to happen, and that's kind of how we would have done things, I guess, more in the past, I guess. But as we grow in, more recently might have been the last couple of years, and specifically for software engineering, we've been able to do a lot more organizational mandated things, which would be specific training for engineers. So if you have an interest in a particular field or your work demands that you know this type of technology, we would pursue training for engineers in that space. As well, and then last year we started with the tech briefs, which is like a super deep dive into a technology. So some people did some stuff on AI. I can't remember what some of the other topics were, but it was like deep dives into specific technology. So, and again, presented to the organization, effectively making them subject matter experts on the particular technology. So those are some of the ways that we actually kind of try to keep up. It's pretty difficult, but again, because most people kind of love technology and software, it works itself out. Though we actually trying to make it very clear part of the organization. So if you have any questions about that, we can talk. Okay, so I guess we're moving on. There's no questions. Fixing bugs. So I'm not sure why I have this question, but it so happens that my favorite part of software engineering is not fixing bugs necessarily, but finding bugs. and finding the reason for bugs in software. I don't even know if you know that, but I don't think anybody knows that.
You know, for real. Like, that's your favorite part?
Sorry?
That's your favorite part of it? Finding bugs?
Yes, finding
And
bugs,
this
not
question was
necessarily.
made for you. Yo.
Yeah, not necessarily discovering a bug, but finding the cause of the bug.
Right. Okay, cool.
Yeah, I don't know, there'd be no difference, but I like that. I like that part of it. So I guess bugs I want to break down into, I guess, just two categories, which is at Teleios we have a QA team, which is quality assurance, and they're responsible for looking at the software that we produce and deciding if it meets particular criteria set out by people deciding on what the solution should be. So the first category would be, well, if it does not do what it is expected to do. So I guess if, for example, when you click on a drop down and you select an item from a list, it should populate, or it should get a big pop-up on the screen saying "woohoo," and confetti should rain down from the screen. So if no confetti comes down, that's a bug, and there's just incomplete behavior or unfinished code essentially, which is a bug, and that's fine. And I think those are simple to work with. It's just us as developers getting better understanding of the solution, better understanding of the requirements, and we can go off and implement the expected behavior. But the other thing would be when you get runtime errors. I'm just going to use that as another category where the code actually throws an exception and the program execution fails. So I guess this is the more fun problems to look at. So, and this is the one I want to focus on a little bit. And I imagine this is the one that you guys are speaking about as well. So the first thing I would suggest is sorry, I was just trying to read the chat. The first thing I would suggest to do is read the error messages very carefully. Pause and read it again. Just because people, when you get an exception, kind of like, oh, I get exception, and they kind of run around looking for the problem as opposed to simply reading the error message and internalizing it and reacting to it. The tools today are very good as compared to in the past. So, like, it literally tells you what line of code your program failed at. It literally said the most popular exception in the world is a null reference exception. It happened on this line. And if you know it's a null reference exception, it means some object that I tried to access behavior on was null. So for me, that's the biggest thing. Read the error messages. Read it again. And as I was saying, the tools today are really, really good. You should know it very well, become familiar with the environment that you're working in. So for us, we work with Visual Studio. Visual Studio is amazing. I guess the last time that I worked on a non-Visual Studio project was a long time ago. So I guess I can't tell how other tools have developed, but Visual Studio is great. You have great things. You could start with use breakpoints. I remember, I think in school, I never knew about breakpoints. We had it, and I didn't know what it was. I used to use print lines to debug my code. Sometimes you need to have that in your back pocket, but use breakpoints. Today you could do conditional breakpoints. You can tell your program. I guess could I ask if the students of you are using breakpoints in your code?
Yeah.
If you know what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great.
We use
So use breakpoints. Pause execution in the program. Look at the values that are available to you. The tools also have things like conditional breakpoints, so you could stop program execution based on some condition. So I can say if some value is equal to 10, pause execution now, and those two things alone is going to get you really, really far. Conditional breakpoints all the way. Again, the tools have things like watches, which will essentially display to you the values of your variables while you pause on your breakpoint. And another useful tool I use, which is in Visual Studio, and again, I'm not sure if it's available in other IDEs. I'm sure there is, which is in Visual Studio, we call it the immediate window. And it allows you to execute code while you pause on a breakpoint. So you could call methods, you could do all kind of fun stuff, but you essentially just write code. So definitely use the tool that you have, learn it, and keep learning. So I think just last year, I learned about some new feature of Visual Studio that allows you to replay executing code without having to restart the application. I was very upset with the person, I'm not going to name him, who showed me this, because I've been having to restart the program every time I want to run it again. But you could easily replay the run of the program. So just learn your tools. Yeah, so as I said, just learn the tools and keep learning, keep up to date, because new things come out all the time. So what else there? So I think the question asked about testing a little bit. So in terms of the debugging process, tools, reading the error messages, and that kind of thing. Another thing you would like to do probably is, well, the bug might be the result of a value that you do expect. And one of the things you could do is look at your methods, look at your inputs, and understand what you expect your behavior to be, or the result to be. So if you call a method and you pass 2 parameters, you expect the result to be something. So if you have a sum method and you're passing 5 and 6, it should return 11. I hope I'm not good at math, so I'm not sure if I said that right. You should expect the behavior, and that's like the basis of unit testing. Something I wouldn't get into now, but it's essentially automated test cases that run. A simpler way to put it is just essentially writing code to exercise the other parts of your code. So you pass specific values to methods, and you ensure that the result is what you expect. And this is essentially the basis of unit testing, which you may or may not be doing in school. I'd advise you to look into it. It's very useful. Instead of you having to run your whole website, if you're using a website, to see if you enter 2 values and your sum function adds correctly, you could just run code to call your method and ensure that these values are returned appropriately. I guess the last thing in bug fixing, I guess, I want to say use your intuition. Intuition for me, I think, is just based on having experience with problems that you experienced in the past, as well as knowledge of the code that you've written. And those two things would help give you a sense of where could this problem be, and trust that intuition and follow it to find the problems. You're gonna go down some wrong roads, and you're gonna look for things that actually not related to the bug. Well, that's okay. That's just steps along the way to solving the problem. So I guess that's it for me on that particular thing. Again, fun part of programming for me. Owen, I don't know if you have any, or students, I don't know if you have any questions.
Nothing to add from me, but I'm glad we all could have heard that. And I think when that chicken is writing code, it will definitely use some of these tips you provided, Alan.
Right.
All right, any questions from these students in the call? All right, cool. If not, you can move on.
Okay, do we have a standard programming language? Yes, mostly. So at Teleios we use Microsoft .NET framework. One sec. Yeah, Microsoft framework using C#. It's the language of choice at the company for a long time. And since a lot of people come in with experience using Java, C# is very similar to Java, and it doesn't take much to get up to speed with it. Other than that, the other languages would be JavaScript, HTML, CSS, and stuff like that. So yes, we do have a standard programming language. And the reason for that is it allows everybody to easily move between projects, to open up some code and understand what's going on very quickly and get up to speed. Yeah, I guess that's all I have to say on that topic. Right, so I mean, the next question kind of highlights the reason for not probably having everybody use. So somebody use Visual Basic, somebody use C#, somebody use F#. If everybody would to use their preferred language, it'll be difficult for people to, when people move on, people move to different projects, it'll be difficult for people to come into the project and work effectively. So other than that, definitely there are situations where different programming languages are needed. So for example, we might do some Node, whereas JavaScript, it's a different kind of technology stack. And it's because the solution demanded it. So that's the only other way we would probably branch out into a different language or different technology if the solution demanded it. So that's it for me. Okay.
All right, Anand, thank you very much, Principal Software Architect and Platform Evangelist. Hi again, my name, as said before, is Erwin.
Great.
If we want to work here, what should we focus our studies and degree on? So just to bubble up a bit, Anand and I both work out of the office of the CSE. I am the Chief Software Engineer, and our principal roles are around helping develop the engineering core at Teleios, ensuring that our engineers are continuing to enhance their work, develop their ability to produce higher and higher levels of quality of solutions, either as demonstrated by less issues, less errors, less bugs, or by demonstrating greater understanding of the kinds of technology we want to build. And so it does start with the kind of people we hire and the kind of things that they're interested in. You generally need to be curious and be willing to go deep in whatever you're pursuing. Not deep in the sense of get a PhD, but have a good understanding of what you're focusing on. We wouldn't necessarily want to limit you in terms of you must do a degree in computer science or a degree in information technology, or you must do software engineering, or you must pursue the computing or programming stream in your course. But it's good to have a very good grasp of programming in general, whatever you chose to do, and be able to express that grasp in terms of projects and activities and researching in terms of software development. So we could expand on that much more, but for now I'd say develop your skill as a programmer as much as you can with the opportunities available to you. So it could be that you actually are not even inside of the electrical engineering department, you're in some other area in the faculty altogether, but you know you want to end up working in a software development firm like Teleios Systems, then you should be finding a way to introduce into the work you're doing aspects of programming and development. I know the University of West Indies has a lot of actual professional software developers, and we'd recommend that you reach out to them. And even if not UE, wherever you are studying, you should be engaging your lecturers beyond what they simply present to you at the course level in terms of what they present in class. You should be talking to them in the offices and asking them what more can I do to demonstrate more skill. This is not simply about passing your exams in the first instance. Is about demonstrating interest and creativity on the road to becoming a competent software engineer. That's a broad answer. As you think about it, if you have questions about it, do feel free to interrupt, ask now, or send us messages via email or social media. Oh, this is a lot of text. I'm sorry, everyone. So that the company won various Partner of the Year awards for software, including for Message Central, for Teleios Code Jam, and for developing QuickWorks. How was it being able to meet various entrepreneurs the world over? That's a super broad question, but I'll tell you this. Meeting entrepreneurs and other engineers around the world is fun. We have a number of contexts in which we can meet people like that for work and otherwise. And it's good to meet people who think like you, who are interested in building like you're interested in building. As you know, the tagline for Teleios is writing software to run the world. And once you meet kindred spirits, even though you may come from different cultures or different languages, you can find things in common about how you engage the world, how you think about the world, how you build solutions. So it was fun, exciting. We were glad to receive the commendations, but like Dale said at the very top of the engagement, Teleios started out with a notion of building quality solutions, building trust, and more than meeting people from all over the world, it's bringing delight and being able to have a real meaningful story when we engage with whomever we engage brings us a sense of joy as well. Do software engineers and programmers have different purposes in Teleios? Nope. Do you have any sort of recommendations or helpful hints for those who may be interested in software design? That's a good question. I want to lump that into software development on a whole, and I suspect maybe the person who asked this question. Are you on the call, the person who asked this question?
Yeah.
When you say hi, what's your name?
Kyle.
Kyle, when you say software design, what do you mean really? Do you mean simply writing code, or you mean coming up with solutions for software and talking to clients, understanding their needs and translating that to a team? What part of software design are you thinking about here?
Basically what the last guy touched about, like how you would go about writing the program, how you would present it to like a customer and stuff.
Right. Okay. Good. Understand the question now. So we do have a bit of answers for that a little later on as it relates to engaging the customer with what we've built. But understanding the problem you're trying to solve in a simple language as you can express it is very important. In software, there can be a lot of complexity. And I think when you're starting out, because it's very complex to understand some of the ideas, you tend to think, I need to bring all the complexity I could bring to it as well. But honestly, if you can take problems and very simply express both the problem and the solution, it helps with how you characterize your own work. So you try to, we have been experimenting with something called domain-driven design and its artifacts. There's a whole aspect of software development called clean architecture, which has as elements of it clean code. So I just mentioned three. I don't want them to be just fancy words you heard. So there's domain-driven design, clean architecture, clean code. We essentially have an object-oriented view of the world, and so the principles of those philosophies in writing software say you need to understand the domain, you need to understand the problem, and represent entities or artifacts from the domain in both the problem definition and the solution. A very strong hint is also to not be too rigid in terms of what you think the solution is. So you could be forgiving with yourself in terms of your first version of building a software in terms of writing code. Represent the problem easily as you can, and no simpler, and then go ahead and try to represent a solution based on that understanding you have. For us, we use the solid principles inside of OOP. Solid is an acronym. I wish I remember what it stood for at this very point in time, but I'm forgetting. The only word coming to mind, and Anand and I talk about this a lot. Anand actually had a session earlier this year at Teleios as a refresher for us. Oh, there you go. Single responsibility principle, the open-close principle, list-curve, substitutability, interfaces, and dependency inversion. That's what SOLID stands for. So we use those principles to help guide how we think about both the problems and the solutions we're trying to build. And from those principles, it allows us to tackle the problems. So yes, you must have an understanding of the language you're using, but then those principles help us design solutions effectively. Did that help, Kyle?
Yeah.
Thanks. I threw a bunch of terms at you, and I'm sorry. With respect to previous question, do you recommend that a student creates their own company within their respective field? Well, I don't think this question directly ties into my last answer, but I would say this question I think was answered well by Dale, which is when Dale said, don't think too much about simply coming out to go get a job somewhere. Have a strong entrepreneurial bent, have a notion that you can create solutions to problems. And generally, when you have those kinds of driving forces, you may not start off having created your own company, but you may have a goal to do so, and you may work towards that. So it might make sense to work at a company for a few years, get a sense of what the working world is like, while knowing your notions, your ideas are valid to be expressed and to be explored. And in doing that, it may lead to building a few of your own companies. We respect that. We think those are great fundamentals, and they allow you to be creative. They allow you to be flexible and have a really strong consideration for the world around you. You stated that you wish to educate and inspire the younger generation. How exactly do you go about doing so? What programs do you have in place for younger students, not in secondary school, which tend to field? So to briefly answer that question, if you look at how we've engaged youth over the years, you can see that in our social media channels, either at Teleios Systems or Teleios CodeJam. Specifically in terms of those who are not yet in, well, you said not currently enrolled. Let's assume that means those who are probably in secondary school or just finishing secondary school. We've gone to secondary schools, we've delivered programs, we've demonstrated some of what we've built, we've carried some of our devices there, our when we used the Lego Mindstorms back in Teleios School Jam, we carried it to secondary school and showed how it worked. When we used the HoloLens, we demonstrated that. We go to events. We essentially, part of our advocacy is to engage younger schools and let them know what the life of a software engineer is. Let them know of the fact that there are local software engineers here in Trinidad and Tobago, because apparently people still don't know. They still get surprised to hear you can write software, you can build code right here in Trinidad and Tobago. So we do have fun distributing people of the notions that you can't. And we keep doing it because we believe in engaging youth at that level and even younger. It helps create the right kind of thinking about the world anyway. All right, Grayson, are you on the call?
Yes, Aaron, I am.
Great. So Grayson is a member of our user experience and design team. Grayson, take it away.
Morning, everybody. Currently, as we are in our first year, many of us are unsure of what field we'd like to specialize in for our final year. Is there any way you can convince those of us who are unsure to pursue a future in software design? All right. First to say, I'm not sure that the pathway is to try to convince you to pursue a future in software design. It really does depend on where your interests are. So if you're in first year, I guess at this point you're really just exploring to try to figure out all the different areas that you can possibly go in when it comes to this field in general. But I'll give you an idea of what software design or user experience design, what aspects it has to it and how people end up in it. And that should allow you to, well, it should inform some of your exploration currently and give you an idea of what you might be interested in as it relates to user experience. All right. To say, I remember when I was starting out years and years ago, there was still this figure that was being thrown around a lot. People used to say that 80% of software projects would fail just because users didn't connect to them very well, or people didn't end up understanding what they were doing. It was just too hard. The learning curves were too great. And that's a long, long time ago now. But for me, that was the beginning of what I became, what to me is now user experience. Back then, programming and software development was seen in a way around some very in some very narrow ways. Developers would really just go out and try to solve problems. The developers understood what they were doing, but there was something of a disconnect. A lot of times, users just didn't get it. But like I said, a lot of that has changed. The field of user experience, people come into designing software. Some of the people that I've met over the years were straight off programmers that then just started to focus on the user experience side. People would have studied things like user interface management, front-end developers or web developers go into it. People who were just visual designers, they worked in Photoshop and Illustrator and tools like that, but ended up in UX. People who have first degrees in psychology focus a lot on how people think, what motivates people, end up in software design. People who have studied things like artificial intelligence or cognitive science, and also a lot of people who were in marketing, studied marketing or studied like even marketing research as relates to marketing. Because all of that stuff comes into the practice of user experience. You don't have to know all of that stuff, but I was just saying that, you know, people come into user experience from various disciplines or with various backgrounds. All because, well, on the one level, it doesn't matter how well you can code. I shouldn't say that quite like that, but you have to be able to, if you're solving a problem for a person, you want to make sure that the person that you're solving it for can actually relate and understand what the solution is that you provided for them and that it can actually work. So I would encourage you to Google what that side, start some research, start looking around to see what that side of things is like. I don't know if I mentioned even like product developers, product designers, as in people who create physical products. The principles by which they function, because they're building things for people to literally use and use successfully. And all of us have experiences with some gadget or something that you use in the real world that just does not make sense or is difficult to use. And that's the starting point of UX. Sometimes you have an idea to solve a problem and it's clear to you. And all of us suffer from that. It's clear to you what you're doing, and you can successfully build it for yourself. But one of the things that they say, one of the principles by which we have to hold ourselves accountable when it comes to UX is that you, the person creating the thing, you're not the user. And so it's always necessary to test your stuff out on other people, get perspectives, talk to people about what you're doing, have other people apart from yourself look at it. It's very easy when you're designing something or working on something to get attached to your idea. And that makes sense. You built it out, you understand what you're doing, you're attached to it. And when you look at a solution and you say, this makes sense, it really does make sense to you. But the world or the people that you're doing it for, they're the other ones that you have to consider. And so you have to kind of put that distance between what makes sense to you to then start to inform your perspective with who your users are, what motivates them. When they're coming to use this thing that you think is so fantastic, when they're coming to use it, what are they really there to do? What do they really want to get out of it? And if you engage in that process properly, you actually then create successful software products for people. Yeah, so as I said, it's something of a journey, but if you're in first year, it's a good time to look around and go on YouTube even and see what you can find there that in terms of discussions about UX and presentations by industry leaders, just to get an idea of what that area of things is about. Because it's absolutely critical to the process. All right, cool.
Grayson, thanks very much. Everyone, it's 9:30 for the students in particular. Are you guys able to stay on for about half an hour longer? Hey, are you guys hearing me fine? Grayson, you're hearing me fine?
They responded yes in
in chat. Oh, great. All right, we're gonna try to get through quite a bit more questions in the next half hour, and we'll see what we get through. Yes. So I'll ask Teleios people to try and constrain the answers going forward, simply so that we could get as many of them answered for the students, and let's see what we get. Yes, everyone. All right, let's take it away. Next, we have SaaSops. This is a pretty broad theme. And I know we invited Carisha to start the conversation. Carisha, you just answer this one, and we'll come back to SaaSops later on. Yeah?
Okay, sure.
All
right. In today's economy and the problem of students graduating and not being able to find a job, do you have any help or guidance for individuals in said situation? So based upon what Erwin said earlier, I think just having that entrepreneurial spirit can help you. So even though you don't have a job, there are things that you can do on your own to get income. You can, for instance, be a freelancer and stuff like that. Or even though you don't want to freelance, my thing about waiting is you always actively wait. You always do something to ensure that you're always bettering yourself. So when the time of the interview comes, you will have something tangible to show that you've been working on this, and that will be a great asset for you in terms of how the interviewer will look at you. So there's a lot of resources out there, and I'll say you can always engage in something that will help develop you even more than what you have learned in school. So what you have learned, you can do practical projects, and so that could either lead to you getting a job on your own and being self-employed, or at the time of interview, it will be a great benefit for you to an advantage. So that is what I'll say for this right now.
Thank you, Carisha. Let's jump into the QuickWorks product development team. We have a number of persons who will be answering here. Let's kick it off with Akash Hariram.
Hi, good day. Y'all
Hey,
hear me?
Akash.
Hey.
Before you go on, you recognize that picture?
Where do you get these pictures? Why? Why are they so old?
I'm super sorry, but the one I had for you wasn't working. And this one, I found it in the Match Dominator archives. Oh my gosh. That's when you were presenting on campus, and I think there was Ralph involved. Anyway, Akash, carry on.
Yeah, so what do you think us as future engineers can do to change or positively impact the industry in the years to come? So there are some big trends happening in the global software industry right now. So things like artificial intelligence, so think robots, chatbots, machine learning algorithms, image recognition stuff, those kind of things. Also, another big one is mixed reality. So your VR and AR. I don't know if anybody here has ever tried a VR or AR headset, but the first time I tried a VR headset, it was completely mind blowing. I think everybody needs to experience it. Another big one that's actually not very new is progressive web apps. So we are actually building out a solution using PWA technology right now. So that's where instead of having to download an app from the Play Store or the iOS store, you literally go to our website and you could install an app directly from that website. So it acts as if it's a native app on your phone. So that's a huge thing that's currently happening. So the transition from native apps towards progressive web apps. Another big one is the move to 5G. So once we get faster mobile internet, things like streaming content directly to your phone instead of having your phone needing to have all of these huge processors and stuff is going to become super relevant. So it's going to impact the VR, the mixed reality industry as well. And other things like blockchain, the normal buzzwords I hear, blockchain and Internet of Things and stuff. So those are the trends that are happening right now. So how do you positively impact this current set of trends? So, well, you could contribute to one or more of these fields. So they are all relatively new, and you could be the ones to bring the innovation and insights in the future. But the most important thing to remember is your ideas, they're not worth very much without execution. So in order for you to bring about the change, you need to be willing to put in the work. It's as simple as that. Yeah, that's it for me. Any questions? No? Okay, cool.
Okay, thanks, Akash. Niall, are you on? Akash, and well, oh, we all working from home. Can someone tell me to see Niall on the call?
Hello? Anybody hear me?
Hey, Niall, we're hearing you fine, man.
Okay.
Morning.
Cool. Morning, guys. Can you describe the process you use for writing a piece of code? To me, well, I break it down into these parts. One, you have to understand the feature or the problem that you're trying to solve. Break it down. So that might be in terms of a meeting with the team, talking about the architecture, talking about time, talking about different approaches. And that's what we call the grooming we do here. And then it is simply to write the code after. Simple. Yeah. So it's breaking down. You might do an architectural diagram. You may talk to others for different approaches to get their experience in what may be a familiar problem, or it have different subject matter experts in certain fields of work that your code may intertwine with, or yeah. So and then it's a write the code after. And that's all I have for that one.
I mean, this was a kind of a simple question, guys. What did you mean by this? Like, we were asking about the ceremony, what IDE we use in general, why we use that one, what's our focus, or was it as simple as the question is? Was it more to than this? Also, Niall, I'm sorry, I could not find your photo, so I just used your initials. If you want to
that's
share
perfect, though. No, that's perfect.
Very well. So are you guys finalists, engineering students?
Excuse?
Sure.
So, well, I didn't summarize this question, but since he brought up and talk about it, when meeting with the team, right? Do you meet with like the user experience designers part as well, like to ensure that the code is usable for like the person who is going to use it, the user?
So I think that all depends on the kind of code or the feature that you're trying to build. Normally we have a meet with the team before the UX, where we break down the feature and then bring in UX after. But we are flexible, so it depends on what it is, because the design can influence how we approach certain things. So
Okay,
it's somewhat subjective.
Okay, so the team you're talking about is just like the software side, the software engineers and programmers.
Yes, but we have different teams. So it have the QuickWorks team, it have the PowerWorks team, it have SSG. So mostly we develop features within a team. So sometimes there's cross team joining of for a feature, but mostly it's within your section.
Okay.
Any other questions?
All right,
Okay.
now I guess you can move on.
All right. So what are the biggest challenges facing the team right now? The biggest challenge is coronavirus right now. And outside of that, it would be dealing with resources. That's the people that we have working on it. Time, which is linked to resources, and for me, it's dealing with supporting legacy applications while trying to develop new applications. So that's my response to the biggest challenges facing the team right now. Any questions? Okay.
All right, let me introduce Russell Sibu. Thank you, Niall. Let me introduce Russell Sibu. Russell is manager of the QuickWorks team. He manages the engineers you just heard responding, Akash and Niall, among others. And he'll take us through the next set of questions. Russell?
All right, thanks, Owen. It's capital W in QuickWorks, by the way. But anyway, I'll let that slide. Are there any additional certifications and professional membership that aid the company's engineers in performing their jobs? So one thing to say on this, learning and education does not stop in the university. Your university experience is actually building your foundation. If you were to pursue software development as a career, and I guess this applies for any other career out there, you need to continuously be updating yourself. With development in particular, things are always changing. So as it pertains to Teleios, we are a Microsoft shop, so we look at Microsoft technologies. So certifications in Azure, Office 365, those would be the two main areas that we look to get certifications in. So if you are pursuing that route and you're looking to go to a software development company that is a Microsoft shop, just do some research and figure out what suits that might be applicable. So in a Teleios context, Azure and Office 365. With respect to the professional memberships, in Trinidad there are a small set of user groups. So there's the TTCS, which I think was founded in UE. And we have Ryan on the call. He could probably add some more to this later on. So you have TTCS, the Trinidad Tobago Computer Society. They actually influence legislation and stuff in Trinidad. So that's a pretty good group to get started with. There's the Linux user group. I think that is still around. There are also two Microsoft user groups in Trinidad right now. There's the TTSUG and the Power Apps group. And I think there's an Azure group. When you could confirm if that has
The
started.
super is a Trinidad and Tobago Azure group, Russell. Azure users group. The super exists.
Right, and Caribnog that Justin just put in the chat. So there are a number of user groups that are out there. You can go in, and I think it is free to join for most of them. Is a good way to essentially hear first-hand experiences of other developers, of policymakers, of guys in the field, which would give you a nice all-round appreciation for the software that you write. So yeah, I don't want to stress any more on that. So yeah, that's me on that one. And if there are no questions, we could move on. Are there any pieces of software that you have made that the average person may be aware of or use on a day-to-day basis? So yes, in Teleios, we have our Message Central platform, which is a mobile messaging aggregation software that interacts with our telecom carriers. So if you use mobile banking, that technology that the banks use interacts with our platform. So yes, you'll be familiar with that. If we head north to the Caribbean, I think somebody mentioned it. I think it was Dale. They're one of the islands of the Caribbean that use the QuickWorks platform to supply or to deliver on services around the national health insurance. So that is being used right now by a particular percentage of their citizens, and is being used on a day-to-day basis. So yeah. On the website, it's mentioned that you serve customers within the telecommunications and energy industries. How exactly do you serve these industries? Okay, like I mentioned before, our Message Central platform links directly with all telecoms. So we have Digicel, TSTT, Cable and Wireless, and those guys. So we interact with those guys, and we provide added value messaging, I guess is the term for it, where you have the banks wanting to use SMS to deliver services to their customers as an example. That is one way. On the energy industries, there's another application that we have called PowerWorks. That is actually being delivered to power companies in the US right now, where we are allowing power companies to carry out inspections of their assets, so vehicles, substations, so they can do inspections there, they can do safety audits, they can brief on jobs, and the PowerWorks application allows these organizations to do that digitally, electronically within the office as well as out in the field. And what we do is we actually take that data and we bring it back into a web-based portal where they can go in and they can look and analyze that data to make critical business decisions in running their business. So yeah. What advice do you have for a person who has just finished a degree and is having difficulty in obtaining a stable job? The first advice I would give is, one, do not get discouraged. Try to, if you are getting interviews but you're not landing the job, learn from the interviews and just push forward. Krisha actually had a really, really nice answer to this question, because I think this was asked before. Always stay ahead, always keep up to date with the thing that you're in. So if you're in development, always look at what's new, what's coming out, try to get certified in it, do projects. I can't stress that enough. Do projects, do your own little projects, try out what you've been learning. Let's look around your neighborhood, look around the people you interact with for projects. There are tons of small projects out there that you can apply what you've learned in the classroom as well as what you're reading online to solve some of those problems. Believe it or not, at least in Teleios, those projects, has a huge weighing in on a candidate coming in. So a candidate coming in for an interview, if they can demonstrate that, hey, look, I'm doing this on the side, I'm interested in AI, and I decided to build this this application, just based on my interest, that has a huge impact on the interviewers. So continue doing that.
Russell, on this one, I just want to underscore how much that applies to our field in terms of software engineering, as compared to many other fields. As a doctor, you can't just doctor on the side and doctor to your...
Well, that might be illegal. But,
it might be illegal, exactly. As an electrical engineer who's certified for a plant, if you don't have the plant, it might be hard to kind of practice plant stuff for real. Whereas in software, you can build software on your own. You can build simple software. You can build even more complex software, complicated games or complicated solutions. It'll be harder. We don't recommend that you do big software projects by yourself. But the point is, you could build software on your own. The industry is very friendly to open source now, which means you can go find some of the large open source solutions online and begin to interrogate them and begin to make submissions to help with their documentation to get started, and then with the actual core solutions. Very, very few industries have that kind of opportunity. And I think we therefore should grab onto it for what it is. If you are interested in software, you're out of work and you have a software engineering degree, or you have the skills of software engineering and you're out of work, please do exercise yourself while you're waiting or while you're considering your next steps.
All right. How does your company approach a challenge, whether it be within the project or in the general working environment? I think one of the key things that we have is an open communication channels. In Teleios, we have a really, really nice family-oriented culture where everyone feels safe. It's a safe environment. So guys feel safe to voice their concerns. Guys feel safe to disagree with each other. And what we do is we communicate. We talk all the time. We share ideas of each other. We are open to go in and quote unquote criticize, constructive criticism. So that is how we essentially approach these things as a team. We know that we're all in it together. So there is no backbiting. There's nobody on the side trying to one up somebody else to look good. That isn't tolerated at all within the organization. So we come together as a team and we solve whatever challenge might be in front of us, regardless of if you are directly on a project or not. So there can be a project that might be slipping A guy might be in another project, might hear of it, and he will get up and go and try to assist where possible. So that's how we approach these things. All right, that's it for me. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Russell.
Hey guys, morning. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yep, hearing you fine.
Great.
Hearing you fine, Richard.
How do you handle stress and pressure? Well, I'd like to say that, I keep calm and carry on, which isn't always true. So generally in stressful situations, I try to take a step back or take a break if possible and try to look at whatever situation with fresh eyes. Try to understand what needs to get done and then also what can realistically be accomplished in time period. So really prioritize the tasks. And after that, it's focus and do what I can. And I guess as many students could attest to, you do some of your best work under pressure, right? Yeah, so that's how I handle stress. How much do you value experience versus qualification when hiring staff? Well, I think both are important, which is not necessarily something as first-year students you want to hear that, experience is very, very important. But experience doesn't necessarily only refer to work experience. As I think Russell had mentioned, your personal projects matter, the work that you do at school matters. So what I'd look for is, whether you can demonstrate that you have gone through the process of building something. And, can you explain how you solved a problem or how you went about learning something new? So yeah, that's also pretty important. Yeah, that's it for me.
Rachel, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Quick works. We return to SaaSops, and as we dive in, I will ask our next speaker to describe SaaSops a bit for the team. We may wrap up with this group. That's because of time constraints, everyone. So let's go straight ahead.
All right, can you guys hear me?
Yep.
All right, cool. So I'm Ikechi. I'm the DevOps manager in the SaaSops group. SaaSops comprises of quality assurance, customer service, and DevOps. So that's 3 groups under one umbrella. SaaS stands for Software as a Service. So basically, we deliver just that, software as a service. So any challenge that you might be facing, we try to solve that problem with software as much as possible. So DevOps is pretty much a coming together of development and operations. So my team basically deals with the handover of software artifacts. So you write code, my team will take that code, well, of course QA will test it, make sure that it's ready, we put it through a number of processes, the end product of which equals like running software in the environment that it's supposed to run in, and then we monitor it to make sure that it's healthy and that users aren't experiencing a bunch of different problems or bugs, or it's running slowly, or it's just not working, a page can't load, software is not running. So we basically just ensure that it's available and it's up and running efficiently in the environment. So this question, what is the difference between operational technology and information technology from a technical standpoint? So information technology pretty much deals with a bunch of systems. So you have telecom systems, so switches, routers, you have data and storage and a bunch of those things. Operational technology, as far as I understand it, leans more towards the industrial sector. So you have like PLCs and stuff that controls, say for instance, on a oil refinery, stuff that might control the refraction of oil or the production of methanol, a bunch of those relays and all of those things. So they're a bit different. IT is very fast-paced and always moving, always changing, always business-oriented. There's always new technology to learn, whereas operational technology, it rarely changes because, say for instance, Trinidad has been in the oil industry for many years, and there aren't too many innovations. So that technology there pretty much remains the same. You do have some similarities though, because just as with IT, you have to guard data or ensure that you don't get hacked, your pages don't get hacked, your database doesn't get hacked. Similarly, with a plant, they have similar considerations. Of course, if data is hacked, then to some degree, no life is lost. On a plant, if something gets hacked, then, well, the plant will blow up. People will die. So the two systems are similar in that you have to guard your assets, but very different in terms of the impact on human life. Hopefully that answers the question. I only have understanding of operational technology because of my dad was an instrumentation engineer, so hopefully that answers whoever asked that question.
Ikechi, is that true? Did I just pick you randomly and pick the best guy to answer the question? Oh my gosh, it's amazing.
It's horrible.
But I just did that quick search because I was at a cloud conference a couple of years ago, and everything you said is true. Apologies for the baby in black, guys. Remember, we're working from home. Everything you said is true, and yet at the conference they were talking about the vast opportunities that await people inside of the OT space because of the advance of things like IoT, the Internet of Things, and a very strong convergence between the technologies we use to support traditionally IT and IT spaces and the technologies we use to support OT going forward. Usually in the past, it used to be very, very different. If you were skilled in OT, you knew things like SCADA technologies, and you, to the extent you did things on a very small, limited device, you had to be very, very skilled in terms of that level of software development. And it's not you don't need any more skills, just the skills you have in IT today, the skills you have managing cloud can support and even help you to do very well on the OT side of things as opportunities present themselves.
Yep. So all that stuff is changing. So to your point, if you were in OT, then if I had knowledge of this particular brand of relay or circuit, then that was the domain of my knowledge. I couldn't transfer that elsewhere. You could transfer some aspects of it, but it wouldn't really be useful outside of that specific domain. Whereas IT is different, but it's changing. We're seeing more and more with IoT that skills are transferable, and people could do more stuff with the knowledge that they have. All right. Hopefully that answers the question. The second question was there ever a time where you were working on a software project and ran into problems because of communication? What would you have done differently if given a chance? That's a funny question. I guess What would you have done differently? Communicate. And that sounds simple and funny, but well, at least to me. But yes, we have run into problems because of communication. Like there's always I don't want to say a war between developers and operations, because that's not really our reality, but in the industry you might discover that developers are very focused on writing code and ensuring that their code works, and sometimes they tend to forget about issues like documentation, which is a form of communication, because you're communicating your thought process into a document. And you're also instructing the next person on how to actually run what you've envisioned. So developers are usually focused on writing code, getting that code to run. Once it runs, yeah, cool. Everybody high fives, you're good. Ops, however, has to deal with customers complaining, this thing not working. Yeah, the code might do what it's supposed to do, but it's not doing it fast enough. Or it's not doing it to the expectation of the customer. Or it's running, but every night at 2 a.m. it crashes. And then you have to go on a search. So communication is important there, because as long as you're handing off a product to some other team or even to a user, you have to communicate how it works. So yes, we have fallen into that trap. And what would you have done differently? Of course, communicate, yes, but even further than that, something that I guess, or at least my team has recently started doing is kind of suggesting or recommending what types of communication we might need in the team. So, I mean, this has many, many layers, but at its simplest, anything that you do that you as a team might have to interact with another team, or you as a person even, there might be a way that you do things that's beneficial to the team, and you might want to hand off that knowledge. Then you'd want to communicate it clearly, maybe do sequence diagrams, maybe talk about it as a team, ensure that everybody understands, everybody's on the same page, leave room for questions, because even though you think you might have all the knowledge, the reality is you don't. And a really strong product is built upon getting input from everybody. Everybody has a different perspective. Everybody sees it differently, and the input of all of that knowledge is what will make it like really robust, because you have the considerations of the collective rather than your individual considerations. So hopefully that answers the question.
Thanks, Ikichi. Krisha, I'll just have you take this one question, then I'll jump all the way to Darren in SSG, and we'll, I think, call that a morning. Are you fine with that, guys?
Sure.
Apologies to all the other Teleios people who were waiting to answer questions, but it is 10 o'clock now, and I am mindful of time. Yeah, so Krisha, you go ahead.
What can I, as a student of electrical and computer engineering, do in your company with my degree? Currently, I would say either become a software engineer or a quality assurance engineer. So as a software engineer or software developer, you'd write code that needs to meet the business requirements and develop applications. And as a quality assurance engineer or quality assurance developer, have to carry out test cases to test the code that was written by the software engineer to ensure that it does what it is supposed to do and as mentioned before with bugs, you'd have to find any bugs in the software. And if any bugs are found, then it will be taken back to the engineer, in which they have to rewrite the code in order to solve or fix those issues. So that is the two roles I would say currently that you will be able to fit into once you engage in this degree. Yeah, and that's it for this question.
Thanks, Carisha. I will add one more role there, and that's operations engineering. Also, you see Carisha, it says Software Solutions and Services Group, which is what Darren's coming from there. Carisha is actually inside of the SaaS Ops group. I was told to remind you guys of that in case you were wondering what Carisha is doing where. Nevertheless, the one more role would be operations engineering. So the software engineer in Teleios essentially is part of the code initiation, code creation for the sake of products. The quality assurance engineer is ensuring that all software products go through the rigorous testing that we have for it, both automated and manual when necessary. And the operations engineer essentially produces solutions to ensure that we have maximum uptime and delivery for the software and services we produce that operate out of SaaS Ops. So those are some of the engineering rules that we have here that a student of electrical and computer engineering or just generally software engineering should be able to leverage with the skills they've developed. Yeah. All right, so I'm going to jump, I think it's a jump, past a few questions. Apologies, everyone. Down to Darren. SIS is our Strategic Information Systems Group. We would have heard from their members talking about how they help ensure Teleios remains secure in today's world and answer a few questions students had there. Unfortunately, because of time, I don't think we should pursue it at the moment. So let's continue with SSG and we'll wrap up there with Darren's questions. Darren, are you ready?
Hi, morning. Can you hear me? Hello.
I'm hearing fine.
Okay.
Darren, I'm hearing
all right.
Fine. Yeah.
Okay, great. So morning all. So my name is Darren Wickham, project manager in the Solutions and Services Group. So essentially what this group is responsible for is working with customers to implement solutions to their business problems. So that could run from automating a process or building a database system, anything along those lines is what this group is responsible for. So I'll kick it off with the first question. So what is the importance of the following to your company? Deadlines, quality of written and oral communications, punctuality, and other soft skills. So I'll take deadlines and punctuality as the same thing. So those things are important because, especially for SSG, because customers have their strategic goals and objectives, and they have their own timelines. And because of that, they have to set deadlines, they have to set dates in which they need to have particular things implemented. So deadlines are important to us because they are important to the client. So once we exceed or we pass that deadline, we are essentially affecting the customer's ability to meet their strategic objectives. So think of it in circumstances where a customer might want to bring a particular service to market, which we are helping by providing a solution. And by failing to meet their deadlines, we are essentially curtailing or impacting on their ability to engage customers. So that's to answer that. So deadlines are really important to us from a time management and from an execution perspective. Quality of written and oral communication, I guess I would say similar to what a few of the persons answering before said. you are a professional. Once you step out into the world of work, you are seen and viewed as a professional. So because of that, there are particular standards, there are particular, I guess, not guidelines, but let me just stick to standards that you're expected to uphold. And written and oral communication is a big part of that, because you're presenting yourself to people and you have to be able to write effectively, to communicate your points, and you, in some instances, you have to be able to talk effectively, to be able to convey your thoughts and express your ideas and whatnot. So communication is very important. And I guess as I was hearing some of the developers and Erwin speak, I'm thinking from a customer's point of view, or let's say a stakeholder, somebody who's interacting with you. If you can't, as a software developer, you can't write or speak correctly or properly, I'm wondering, how are you going to be able to effectively write code, which is a form of, I guess, loosely communication, being able to write effectively to get the machine or the software to do what you want it to do. So that was the my response to that. The other soft skills are important as well, because you're going into a working environment, you are going to be working with other people. So things like active listening, being able to hear others and work with others, those are the types of skills that employers would look out for. We look at it closely in Teleios. So I know at the start of the session, Gillian Codrington, she mentioned the importance of fit. And that's where soft skills come into play. Can you work with others? Can you communicate effectively? Can you consider others as you go about doing your task? Are you responsible? Do you have proper time management skills? And all those things are things that you need to work on, and they are very important. It might differ a bit from rule to rule, but across the board, there are fundamental skills like listening and working in teams. Those are two things that I think are fundamental skills to have. So next question. How are you reprimanded when you don't meet deadlines? Are there different levels of punishment based on the projects you're working on or you are working? And if so, what are some? So reprimanded, I guess, kind of strange word. Yeah, there is some impact negatively, some negative impact when you fail to meet deadlines. As I said before, if you are failing to meet a deadline for a customer, you are essentially impacting on their business and their core business needs. So the reprimand may come in the form of repeat business. One of the things that we've realized is that it's very important to maintain good customer relationships. And good customer relationships are sometimes hinged on meeting deadlines. And failing to do so may mean that you no longer receive business from that customer. And it is more expensive to onboard new customers than it is to retain existing ones. So deadlines are important to us because it allows us to keep customers satisfied and happy. And part of our overarching objective for SSG is to ensure that our services and what we do allows customers to achieve what they want to achieve. And that's why you hear about the tagline, software to run the world. So in terms of the punishment, well, is essentially what I said before. Repeat business usually drops. There's loss of revenue, loss of income. All those things come as a result of failing to meet those deadlines. How does your company manage multiple projects at the same time? And do you have advice for students with regards to proper time management? So multiple projects, I would say, firstly, of course, it depends on the amount of resources that you have. So, and the rules that are needed. So depending on the type of project, you may need to or can run multiple projects at the same time. but it depends on what skills are needed to fill the particular requirements for that particular project. So for us, we have, I believe, 5 developers at this point. So we are able to manage the development work for multiple projects. As it scales, we're going to have to bring on more developers, but it solely depends on what skills are required at a particular point in time. And skills are transferable. So Ikechi is a member of DevOps, and he might be needed at one point in a project earlier, but in another project, he's needed later. So as a result of that, we are able to schedule and coordinate his time so he's able to provide his expertise to both projects. Advice for students in terms of time management, one of the things that we've learned here at Teleios is everything cannot be a priority. So priorities are usually set based on a deadline or based on a constraint. So in looking at your time and looking at how you spend your time in terms of writing papers, going to classes, whatever it is, for time management, I would say you need to prioritize your work based on what deadlines you're facing and what constraints you have. Deadlines, so for example, in terms of writing papers, you know you have 3 papers to submit by the end of April. Put in some time, perhaps every day, to get to that point easily, rather than spending a lot of time in the last few weeks trying to get that work done. Because it is important, and it's a constraint in a sense, but it's something that you would need to do to ensure that you achieve the goal, which is submitting those papers on time. So I would say, yeah, just structure your time, look at what your deadlines are, look at the prioritization for each of those things, look at the things that you need to do now based on those deadlines versus things that you could do in a few weeks. I know it sounds like a pretty standard thing, but you'll be surprised how many people and in terms of projects, you get tied up in focusing on things that are not needed right now. So I think that's my take.
Hi, my name is Kishawit. I am a software architect in the Solutions and Services Group, that's SSG for short. So, what kind of leadership style do you find most motivating? Well, as someone previously said, here at Teleios, we have a very family-oriented kind of culture. So it's not that here you would have any situation where you have a boss and you're afraid to talk to your boss and you get yelled at or any sort of thing like that. So when it comes to leadership, people more provide good guidance. It's people-to-people communication. So you can just talk to someone and you can get feedback, and you don't have to feel any negative way about, hey, I don't know something. So I feel that kind of leadership style where you more motivate people than bring them down, which is exactly what we have here, is more helpful, because then employees will learn better and they will grow.
Good day, students. My name is Richard Ince. I am the release manager in the department called Solutions and Services Group here at Teleios. The question you've posed to me is, do you have any up and coming projects that you can potentially share with us? Sure, no problem. I have 2 I'd like to share with you from the context of me being a release manager. So I'm going to share 2 projects that we are releasing / recently released. I'll keep the names of the clients confidential, and a bit of the project would be somewhat vague. However, I hope it would describe to you the sufficient complexity and the process in releasing these projects to our clients. So the first client is in the airlines industry. They contacted us and they'd like to automate a solution for managing contracts at their company. right now, in the past, that solution would have been a very paper-based manual process, moving from one person to the next, relying on signatures, a lot of attachments by via staplers and additional pieces of paper. What we've done is collaboratively work with them to make that entirely digital and to ensure that the process can be facilitated through email interaction, through forms, and through uploads of attachments. As you can imagine, sufficient and significant efficiencies and improved effectiveness of the process is being accomplished through their use of this. And the process to getting to there would have involved a lot of collaboration with the client, a lot of interaction, which you would have heard mentioned by Dale Wilson and to some extent Darren Wickham as well. The second project, I just pull up a graphic here. This is not the customer, however, it does give an idea of what we're working on. You know, there are three arms of government: the judicial, it kind of interprets the law; the executive, which carries out the law; and the legislative, which makes the law. In our case, the project that we're working on is in this realm. We work to help the executive arm of government fulfill some of their requests or facilitate the process to fulfilling those requests. In that specific project, we are working in a similar fashion to the previous customer I described, taking a manual paper-based process and converting it into a digital process that has increased effectiveness, increased accountability, allows persons to see into the processes a lot more easily, and therefore draw results and draw management and draw improved overall efficiency of the process to those who need it most. I guess I can stop there. I've shared with you two projects that we are currently releasing or have released recently to our clients, and both of them you can see the similarities: the digitization, the automation, the collaboration with the client to get it fulfilled. And I guess that's a similar thread you've been hearing throughout everyone who speaks, a real tight knitting between the client and the customer. And just to close off with something Darren said, which was that it's much easier and much more profitable, a lot less expensive to please your current customers than to go after new ones. And this is a thought that or driving consideration we have in any client interactions that we have. Thanks for your time, and hopefully this answers your questions. Bye.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Justin Gittins, and I am the Delivery Project Manager for the Solutions and Services Group here at Teleios Systems. And yeah, I'm happy to join this call and to answer a couple of your questions. So I'll jump right in. The first one is, does your company work with other companies as commissioned to design a specific piece of software? If so, how do you communicate effectively with each other? Okay, interesting question. And so yes, we do work with many other companies on a given project. And the question is more so about communication. All right, so, and I'd say that communication, as you would already know, is very, very important. So if not done correctly, it could lead to a failed project or one where the output doesn't really get used. As an example, and I'll start with a bad example, I was on a trip recently and re-entering the country, Trinidad and Tobago, in the approaching immigration, there were these kiosks, and the intention is that you go there, you enter all the information from your flight and whatnot, and you get electronically processed. But turns out, even if you use that kiosk, you still need to go and stand by the immigration booth, and they have to process the form there, and then you go to customs, and so everything is still manual, even though they've implemented an electronic system via those kiosks. And from what I've heard or learned, apparently there was a huge breakdown in communication on that project. That project involved the immigration department, the airports authority, and even customs. And somewhere along the line, those three entities are not playing nicely. So that's an example of a multi-stakeholder project where maybe perhaps communication was not at its best, and it influenced planning and eventually execution of the final product. Suffice it to say that no one could go to use that solution effectively, because while you might use the kiosk, you still need to go get processed in a manual way. And so that's the bad example. I'll give a good example from Teleios' experience. People on the call earlier may have mentioned that we worked with government in the Caribbean to implement a health solution. And in that project, there were several entities. There was a company in charge of policy development, so that was a consultant. There was Teleios, we were the solution implementers. The actual project, that was the health agency. And then there was that country's NIB, National Insurance Board. And they also had another entity, because in this scenario, we had to interface with the NIB's system. So they were providing an API to us, and another company built that API. So there were several other entities which were required for a successful solution and deployment. So with all of those stakeholders, you could imagine you need to have very clear and standard ways of communication. So to answer the question, how do you communicate effectively? Well, there are some things that we did inside that project. Sometimes things are better communicated face to face. And so that will kind of get decided in the context of the team and who's managing the team. But yeah, some things are better said face to face and not like on a remote call like this is. But there are cost implications to that, and so that needs to be well thought out. Emails are irreplaceable in the business realm and in project deployment. So you still need to write, you still need to send emails. And inside of that, you need to be sure you set context for what you're trying to communicate and ensure that it's concise, clear, and to the point. Believe it or not, phone call still has its place in the middle of a go live or with an urgent decision that needs to be made. Sometimes emails aren't immediate enough, and so you need to just pick up the phone and call who needs to be contacted. And last thing I'll say is, I think in the context of a development team, communication is needed by way of providing daily updates. I think from our experience, we use something called TFS, and that's where we house all of the backlog items, all of the build items that make the successful project. And in there, all of the resources are assigned different pieces of work. And if you don't communicate via daily updates in there, well, I'm finished with this task, I'm not yet complete with this one, I'm 50% there, then you don't have a real sight of where the project is, what's the status of the project by way of completed work. And so there's a role for a communication rule for every stakeholder in the project. And so I think it's a very good question. It's something that it takes organizations and firms like ours a real long time to develop a proper communications plan and strategy that works. And so, yeah, this is definitely an area of focus. All right, so let's move to the next question. Software development can be used to help multiple industries. What are some of the industries that your company is involved in, and do you plan on expanding into any other industries in the foreseeable future? Okay. Well, Teleios has been in business for a long time now. Longer, well, I was going to say longer than I've been alive, but that's not true. But we've been around for a long time. And it's very clear that writing code that works and like running a successful software development company, it's two different things. They're on the same thing. And I say that only to make the point that we've learned that we need to be fairly focused in our business. So while we might have an expert software development team, which means you could build any kind of software, for a successful business, you need to be focused on maybe just a few business needs. And for us, that has been in the messaging space, mostly SMS. We've done a ton in mobile banking. We have done business optimizations and workflows. We built an entire platform to facilitate workflows for businesses. We've dabbled in health, like you've heard before. And now we are pivoting, we're focusing our attention on power utilities in the US and locally. And generally in that health and safety HSC applications type portfolio with our new PowerWorks platform. And so that's new for us, but we're really spending a lot of time and effort in understanding the space and building our platform to cater to those business needs. And yeah, I think that's all I could say about that right now. So that was my last question. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank you for the opportunity to have this brief chat.
Yeah, that's it from you guys from UE.
Well, we would like to thank you all for giving us the time today to answer our questions in light of the pandemic and stuff. We'd like to go on the to visit your Teleios, like physically be there, but sad we can't.
Yes. So
that's about it.
Who's this? Sorry.
This is I'm Kyle Jamungo.
Kyle, again, apologies. We did change up on you guys in the very end. Sorry, very close to what we had originally agreed to do. It did come from following the media and the guidelines issued about this particular pandemic, COVID-19. Nevertheless, I wanted to kind of return to the home to talk about working from home a bit to wrap up. Working from home here is not just what we're doing today. Teleios started in Trinidad, was built locally, and continues to press as far forward and as far out as we can with our mandate and mission of writing software to run the world. One of the questions you guys asked is, can we do anything? What do you think we can do? And I think Dale answered it really well. In this context, we're working from home, but we have global ambition. And I would like you guys to hear that and understand you can as well. That's it. Good. It's very good talking with you guys, and look forward to the stream later on. That's it. Take care, everyone.
Okay. Take care.
Take care.